We're here to announce charges in the shooting this weekend in North Lawndale that left 15 people injured at a Halloween party. 48-year-old William Groves has been charged with 15 counts of attempted first-degree murder, 15 felony counts of aggravated battery with discharge of a firearm, 1 felony count of aggravated unlawful use of a weapon by a felon, 1 felony count of aggravated discharge of a firearm in an occupied building. Groves was identified as the individual who was removed from the party that night and came back to the gathering and began shooting into the crowd shortly after 1 a.m. Sunday morning. He's a convicted felon who shouldn't have had a gun. Again, he's a convicted felon who should not have had a gun. A summary closure has also been ordered for the business where this unsanctioned gathering occurred. I want to thank the 10th District officers who responded to the shooting that night and quickly apprehended this dangerous individual. They were on scene monitoring the location in the area, and the hard work of those officers in the 10th District and the leadership of Commander Betancourt led to the capture of this individual shortly after the occurrence of the crime. Our detectives, I'd like to thank them for the extremely hard work they did in getting this individual charged. I also have to thank the State's Attorney's Office, Foxx, for the hard work working with our detectives to get this individual charged. Though this arrest brings a measure of justice to the 15 victims and all those who witnessed this violence that night, the trauma remains. I want to focus, and we need to focus, on the victims and support for them moving forward. To everyone affected by the shooting and to our North Lawndale neighbors, we're standing with you. That's why we're here today, and that's why you see us all standing here. We know the lasting effect this violence has on our neighborhoods, on our victims, and our community members. And we will be here with you as you process this. As a reminder, anyone who was affected by this shooting and needs assistance is encouraged to meet with the crime victim advocates at today's Victim Assistance Center that was set up in response to this shooting. The Assistance Center is open from noon through 7 p.m. at Wyman, located at 1241 South Pulaski, just down the street from where the shooting occurred. Our crime victim advocates are on site and ready to help connect you with resources and support through this healing process. I want to thank the local organizations who are partnering with us to provide resources at this assistance center. I'd lastly like to say this. We talk about working collaboratively together, and we talk about the mayor's focus on the full force of government. That's what you're seeing here today in play, and you see us all standing here together for a community that's been traumatized. Now, this trauma didn't happen just Sunday night. This has been going on for quite some time. We recognize that, and we're going to keep pushing forward to bring justice in these cases. So to those bad actors who attempt to take lives or take lives, we will be here to stop you. We will be here to apprehend you. So please understand this. We're working together now, and we're working as a community, and we will continue to do so to bring justice to this city and to help make this city as safe as it can possibly be. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Brandon Johnson.
Thank you, Superintendent Snelly. Thank you for your leadership and to the police department for its quick and response to this mass shooting and tragedy but also thank you to our police department for their bravery and their courage. I'm also grateful to be joined by my colleague and dear friend and sister, the state's attorney, Kim Foxx. Thank you for your leadership and your commitment to delivering justice on behalf of the people of Cook County, the city of Chicago, and the entire state of Illinois. I'm also grateful that my congressman is with me as well, Congressman Danny Davis, who has been an incredible champion at the federal level, pushing for the type of reform that is desperately needed within our criminal system. And then, of course, my colleague, the Alderwoman of the 24th Ward, Monique Scott, for her leadership and bravery during these very difficult and challenging times. As Superintendent Snelly has already articulated, when I've talked about the full force of government, this is exactly the vision that I've set forth, that we're going to hold individuals accountable who create havoc and harm in our communities. And that accountability is on display right now. We're also very much moved and deeply touched by those who are oftentimes impacted by violence and trauma, but in too many instances ignored. We won't do that. To all of the victims and survivors of violence in this city, the full force of government is available to provide the type of support that's needed for these families. In fact, I've made a line item budget to address this very dynamic. Now, all of you know where I live. Many of you know where I worship. I live in Austin and I worship in North Lawndale. And being a part of these two dynamic communities, make no mistake about it, when violence like this disrupts our city, it's literally at our front doors. And those in my community and those who are in my faith community have been impacted for a very long time by the recklessness of those who wish to create harm and fear. But I'm also grateful that we have a community that is coming together to address the unaddressed and the gross neglect that have left too many of our communities in desperate state. In many instances is why we're seeing the type of trauma that's manifesting. And so again, thank you, Superintendent Snelling, for your leadership, to our state's attorney for your courageous and your bravery, and to our Alderwoman, Monique Scott, for being a leader on the front line, and to our entire congressional delegation. The same support that shows up for communities when they experience mass shootings outside of the city of Chicago, that's the same support that has to be on display for the people of Chicago, nothing less. And with that, I'm grateful that our state's attorney is with us today, and I will turn it over to her. State's Attorney Kim Foxx.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Superintendent Snelling. Thank you to the Chicago Police Department for their swift work in apprehending the suspect in this case. At noon today, Mr. Groves will appear at first appearance court. The State's Attorney's Office has filed a petition to have him detained pre-trial, such that he is a threat to those in the community and needs to be detained pre-trial. I want to again commend the work of the Chicago Police Department, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, and most importantly, the members of the Lawndale community who stepped up and helped and assisted in identifying this defendant and coming in and cooperating with our law enforcement partners and cooperating with the State's Attorney's Office. Many times when we talk about the violence that is impacting our communities, we talk solely about police and prosecution. As I have said over and over again, it is a three-legged stool. It's police, prosecutors, and community members coming together in order to ensure that we can have justice and accountability in instances such as this. The fact that we were able to apprehend this suspect so quickly, to have charges filed within the last 48 hours, is a testament to that cooperation. It is a testament to that collaboration. And it is something that I'm incredibly proud to have the support of our law enforcement partners and the members of the Lawndale community. I do want to take a moment to remind us that this was in fact a mass shooting. Over the course of the last several days, there have been conversations nationwide about mass shootings. And the reality is they become all too familiar in places like Chicago, where we have seemingly become numb to the violence. 15 people were shot in Lawndale. 15 people. That while those bullets may have physically harmed them, as the mayor has indicated, as the superintendent has indicated, the trauma will remain. That this has happened this year when we had a similar incident around this time last year in which 14 people were shot. This should be shocking to our systems. This should shake us to our core. We should not have to watch incidents in Maine or in Texas or in other places to have our heartstrings pulled. That we must do better. We must invest in these communities. We must invest in the healing that is necessary for those who have been impacted by this extraordinary display of violence. And we must hold this individual accountable. The Cook County State's Attorney's Office continues to stand ready, and I want to commend the men and women of our felony review team who worked around the clock with our detectives, interviewing witnesses and victims and bringing us to this moment. We will continue to work with our law enforcement partners, and we will continue to work with those in the full force of government of the city of Chicago and the county of Cook to address the ongoing crisis of gun violence in our communities. While today is the first step for accountability for those victims in this community, the work is never ending. You have the commitment of the Cook County State's Attorney's Office to not deter ourselves from this work. With that, I'd like to introduce you all to Alderman Monique Scott, who is the alderman of the 24th Ward where this incident occurred.
Thank you. As a mother, I can't imagine the horror of that phone call that a child or a loved one has been shot. The thought of that call, that your community are victims of a mass shooting, is beyond comprehensive. And as a human being, I truly, deeply feel saddened for the families affected and the trauma that will be left behind. I'm also reminded of the anniversary of a mass shooting in East Garfield where 14 victims were shot and 1 was killed. Somehow, this has become a routine. This shouldn't be normal to any one of us, as the state's attorney just stated. It shouldn't be normal. As we learn what has happened and who's responsible, we may never understand what leads anybody to shoot into a crowd and harm fellow human beings like this. Such violence, such evilness is very senseless. I want to thank my community. I want to thank the police department. I want to thank the state's attorney's office. This is a time where community really, really stood up, because most time we go silent. And where this mass shooting is a trauma, but we have a victory because we have a person in custody. If there's anything to take away from this tragedy, it's the reminder that life is very fragile. Ultimately, it's how we choose to treat one another and how we love one another to end senseless tragedies as this. Thank you, guys. Continue to pray for the 24th Ward. My community, we need it. There is a victim advocacy at YMN today, starting from 12 to 7. Thank you, guys, for your support.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm pleased to stand here with Mayor Johnson, our Superintendent of Police, State's Attorney Foxx, Alderman Scott in the 24th Ward, an area that I've lived in much of the time that I've lived in Chicago. I want to thank a resident of the community. I was supposed to be heading off to Washington, who called me and said, did you know that this press conference was taking place? And I said I didn't, because I was supposed to be heading to Washington. But I want to commend the Chicago Police Department for the swift action in terms of responding to this situation and this crisis. I also want to commend the mayor for the stance he has taken relative to how we fight crime and how we push for safe communities. Senator Durbin and I are very engaged in trauma-informed care and have 2 bills that we have actually introduced, with one being passed. And so I compliment the Chicago Police Department on the aftermath in terms of the recognition of traumatic experiences that people have when these incidences occur. And so I was so very pleased to just know that that has been institutionalized and is set up and operating on behalf of the people. I thank law enforcement and commend them. You know, a lot of people have certain feelings about police, law enforcement, what it means. But the city of Chicago is a top flight city, and we do have crime, we do have every other need, but I'm pleased to be a part of an outstanding group of public officials caring for the people, working for the people. And I thank you, Mr. Mayor, very much.
So with that, do we have any questions?
We'll start here, and we'll work our way around here. Please introduce yourselves.
Hi there, Marissa Perlman, CBS 2 Chicago. What do we know about this warehouse on 13th and Pulaski? City records listed as an art gallery, but since 2021, we know the buildings department questioned if it was an unlicensed club. What responsibility does the owner of the property have in regards to this mass shooting?
Well, right now, that's under investigation. There is a summary closure on the property. We do know that that location has had problems in the past. This event was unlicensed, so it's still ongoing, but we're going to take every measure to make sure that this never happens again.
Sandra.
Sandra Torres with NBC5. Superintendent Snelling, you mentioned that this man is a convicted felon who shouldn't have had a gun. Do we know what weapon he had and how he obtained this weapon?
I can, Earth City, I'll have Chief Earth City talk about that a little bit.
Good morning, Antoinette City Chief, Bureau of Detectives. Thanks to the quick response of the 10th District officers, we were able to recover as evidence a .357 caliber handgun, which was processed as part of this investigation, and it's still under investigation as to how a convicted felon came in possession of that handgun.
Can I ask one more question? Just wondering, State's Attorney Foxx, you mentioned that the Lawndale community really came forward. Could you provide more details as to how they helped out? Was it surveillance video? Did they just talk about seeing this person?
All of the above. I would note, as the Alderwoman said, oftentimes when incidents like this happen, particularly in a close-knit neighborhood where people are afraid to speak up. Usually it might take days or weeks for someone to come and say that they've seen something. In the immediate aftermath of this, the residents of Lawndale, the people who were at that party, spoke. They sat down with our law enforcement partners. They came in and spoke to the state's attorney's office expeditiously. Every piece of evidence that could be gathered from them, for those who were on site, they were willing to share. And so again, when we talk about how these crimes are solved, yes, the 10th District was on there immediately, but they weren't there when the incident happened. And so for those residents to work with the 10th District detectives, to also work with our office, to allow for us to be confident in our charging decisions this morning is a testament to the community stepping up and advocating on behalf of their safety.
Stephanie.
And just real quick, I'd like to make a statement about that too, and to State's Attorney Foxx's point. It shows 2 things that the community stepped up in the way that they did. It showed, one, that it appears that we may be building some trust between the police department and our community members, number one, and we can talk about our officers' contact with the community and the way that we're working with the community, but it also speaks to communities who are sick and tired of dealing with this, sick and tired of the violence, and they want to step up and do something about it so that their communities are safer. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, Stephanie Way with ABC7. To confirm, there was no one else who had fired a weapon. This was just one person who fired into the crowd?
That's still under investigation right now.
And then can someone talk about the Emergency Assistance Center opening tonight too, a little bit more?
Yes, as a matter of fact, Glenn Brooks, you want to step up and talk about that?
Good afternoon. So the Emergency Assistance Center will be open today from 12 to 7 p.m. And I just want to thank, one, our team, which is under Aileen Robinson, our Assistant Director, who really stood this up in less than 48 hours. And I cannot tell you the amount of support that we receive from other community-based organizations, whether that be UCAN, whether that be Lawndale Christian, whether that be the hospital base, and UMAN opening its doors and providing a space for us. And more importantly, the community which has really stepped up and said, this is necessary. We deserve the same type of services that everyone else gets after such a tragic event. And we are determined to make sure everybody comes together and we begin this healing process. Even though the incident and accountability has started in that progress, the process of healing has also begun so that the community can move forward and live its own dreams. Thank you.
Jim?
Superintendent, what did this guy do to get removed from the party?
I'm sorry, what's
What
that?
did he do to get removed from the party?
There was some disturbance inside. Obviously, it's still under investigation right now, but there was some disturbance inside where he caused some issues and they removed him from the party. Obviously, got angry, returned, and started to fire into the crowd.
Evelyn?
Yes, hi, Evelyn Holmes from Channel
How are you?
7. How are you? Two questions, actually. First question is, how instrumental were the partygoers who were in attendance when this occurred? How instrumental were they in identifying the suspect?
You said it, instrumental. I can't put a measure on that because the description that they gave, the identification of this individual helped our officers apprehend this individual quickly.
They knew him.
Yes, and they were able to give a description of this individual, which led our officers to pass that information on, and the communication amongst the officers led us to be able to apprehend this individual. And I just can't say enough about the work in that collaboration.
Second question, with respect to the promoters, obviously you've got the summary shutdown going on or closure going on now. Could there potentially be charges or other kinds of sanctions that the promoters would face in light of what occurred?
Well, here, I'll turn that over to State Attorney Foxx.
Certainly, we will be looking at all aspects of this, an unsanctioned party, an unpermitted party, and a building was not for that use. Look at whether that is a criminal matter as well as working with the city regarding the permitting matter. But certainly that is ongoing. Today is about the person who inflicted the damage to those bodies, but the investigation has not been completed. We want to ensure that something like this doesn't happen again.
Just humor me, what kinds of charges what does that look like? I'm just trying to understand the depth and the breadth of what you're looking at and where you're going with it.
You know, certainly, Evelyn, it's preliminary, but we want to be able to see how was it they were able to get into the building, did they falsely apply for permits, was there any documentation that they used where they were not truthful in their application, so those types of things we will be looking at. So there's a breadth of that. And again, there's the criminal aspect of it, but there's also a civil aspect of it that we would also be looking with the City of Chicago Building Department as well.
Thanks, Evelyn. Joni?
I'm sorry, I had to step out for a moment. When I returned, you were talking about the person and how they were identified by the community. It was a party. Was that person intended to be there? Were they trying to get in? How well known was this person to those who were there to have a good time?
My understanding at this time that the person was in the party, right? And there was a disturbance, person was removed from the party, and that was when the person returned and began to fire into the crowd.
If
Do
I
you have a
may.
message for the
I'm sorry, if I may, there'll be a full recitation of the facts in our bond proffer at the pretrial detention hearing. And there will be a recitation during the hearing, and we will make that proffer available that will list many of the details that we were talking about this morning.
Christine?
You guys mentioned obviously the age of this person, but tell us a little bit more, just mentioned he's a criminal. Tell us a little bit more about his background, who this person is.
Well, we can get you that information. Right now, we don't want to make that a part of the press conference, but we can get you that
Can you give me
information.
the spelling? Yeah, the spelling of his name.
I just want to make sure that I get this right.
Um,
Last name is Groves. That's Groves. First name is William, common spelling.
48.
48 years old.
48.
Okay, go ahead.
And just a quick question, do you all have any updates on the conditions of those victims, or I don't know if any of those wounded actually assisted in this investigation?
Well, it's quite a bit. Chief or City, do you have an update on that?
Good morning, Antoinette City, Chief Bureau of Detectives. Initially, there were 2 victims that were listed in critical condition. Their conditions have been upgraded. The injuries for all of the victims in this do not appear life-threatening any longer at this time.
Matt?
Mac Lederman of Block Club Chicago. Have any of you spoken directly to the victims or the families of the victims? And if you have, can you give a little insight to what those conversations were like?
I'll turn that over to Chief or City.
Good morning, can you repeat that question, sir?
Have you spoken to the victims or the families of the victims? And can you give me a sense of what those conversations were like?
Sure. As part of an investigation, we will interview victims. And so as everybody here knows, everybody received treatment after the incident occurred. But as part of the investigation, they were responsive to our investigation and what we needed in order to advance it. So we appreciate again, as I think the message is here across the board, there is such a swift outcome in this investigation because there is absolute support from the community in getting the information we needed to work with the state's attorney to get these charges.
Thank you very much for coming, everyone. Thank you.
You said nobody's in critical condition, right? I'm sorry.
Hey, Mayor, do you plan on visiting any of the victims at all?